Yeah, as John said, I'm an actor, I'm a writer. I've been an improviser for about 14 years, and before that I wrote marketing copy for a consulting firm. So this is not going to be a policy talk. This is not going to be a governance talk or where this country should go. I am not qualified to give you one of those. Beware of actors who say they are. However, I am really interested in the optics and the presentation, the ad copy, the show business of politics, and I think it's going to come down to that this year in what is looking like it's going to be one of the closest elections of all time. Let's start with a little bit of history. Let's take you back to an ancient campaign from our country's roots. We had a divisive, unpopular incumbent, an extremely shaky economy. We had a challenger who was dodging charges of being an out-of-touch elitist. It seems like millions of years ago, but what I've found in my research is that political campaigns tend to make the same mistakes again and again and only occasionally learn from those mistakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through the history of campaigns that went kind of awry through narrative problems or missteps, not so much gaffes. These are things that were actually planned and rehearsed and studied and that people meant to do. We can talk about corporations or people and other foot and mouth moments like that. What I'm more interested in is the really deliberate, like, oh, this is going to work. This is going to be a terrific commercial, and why it really, really wasn't. We will call this talk the reboot of the terrible campaign franchise. And yes, I did just learn Keynote, and I'm really excited about it. Probably the most indelible image of the 2004 campaign is this one. This came obviously before the whole Swift boating thing, and again, we're not going to get into policy, but here's a guy who is being dogged by accusations that he's a rich kid, that he's out of touch, that his wife is an heiress, that he doesn't speak for the common man. And while the Republicans are holding their convention in New York City, just a few miles away from Ground Zero, he goes windsurfing off the coast of Nantucket. Has anyone here ever been windsurfing? One guy, two people have been windsurfing. I got a room here of creative types in Los Angeles. This is what the middle of the country talks about when they say cultural elite, and none of us have been windsurfing except two. A windsurfing rig will run you about $1,800. This is probably not the way you want to show people you're one of the common folks. $1,800 is a lot of money. It is, however, not 25 million. Which is roughly what Rafalka, Ann Romney's prize mare, is worth, to say nothing of the tax credits that accompany it. As I said, this is going to be a really squeaky election, as was 2004. So what's interesting about those close elections, not the landslides, because the landslides usually have to do with major economic seismic shifts. I don't mean recessions, I mean capital D depressions, I mean wars that are raging on. The squeakers can come down to the show business. They can come down to the character of the candidates. Let's go back really, really way back to what is widely considered the first really ugly presidential campaign, 1800s. This is John Adams, our second president. He followed George Washington. He was a divisive character. He was famous for his temper. He was known to get into stick fights in Congress. Not a joke. He would take his walking stick and hit people he disagreed with. He would take off his wig. Obviously, he is not shown with it here, but he would take off his wig and stomp on it if he didn't get his way. He passed some incredibly unpopular legislation. Look up the Alien and Sedition Act. He was cracking down on immigration in 1800. He was running against his old friend Thomas Jefferson, who was a bon vivant, a man about town, cultured, calm, cool slave owner, but still extremely well liked by the electorate. Now, campaigns weren't run then the way they are now. They were, the candidates actually went and did their day jobs and left the campaigning for surrogates who went out and made some stump speeches on their behalf. They let partisan newspapers do a lot of the work for them. But Adams still had control of the copy and the messaging. He still was able to approve the messages that went out to the electorate. And facing criticism for his incredibly hot temper, he let the following be published in a partisan Adams newspaper, warning America what might happen if Jefferson was elected president. Murder, robbery, rape, adultery, and incest will be openly taught and practiced. The air will be rent with the cries of the distressed. The soil will be soaked with blood and the nation black with crimes. Are you prepared to see your dwellings in flames, female chastity violated, children writhing on the pike? Next time you are watching Glenn Beck or Keith Olbermann, for that matter, and you think, man, how did we get here? We've always been here. Country's 24 years old, and that's the kind of rhetoric that was being thrown around. Adams lost. America thought he was crazy. Adams proved them right. He lost. We're going to skip a bunch of time here. I want to go ahead to the modern age of the campaign, to 1960. What happens in 1960? What's the first thing that happens on television in 1960? The Beatles? Not yet. Close, though. The debate. Someone said debate. That's right. First televised debate. Here's a pretty famous image from that debate. Richard Nixon, not ready for television, really. Unshaven, extremely sweaty. In all fairness, just got out of the hospital, had knee surgery, had a staph infection. If you're ever going to muster some sympathy for Richard Nixon, now might be the time. Sicker than a dog, and up against John F. Kennedy, that wad of charisma from New England. It's a disastrous appearance on TV. This is how the modern campaign was ushered in. This, again, is just bad luck. Let's look at some of the optics that Nixon deliberately chose to put out there. Here are a couple of campaign buttons from that campaign. Now, I'm not a graphic design guy, but there's some things are pretty easy to notice. Kennedy smiling, looking right at you. For President John F. Kennedy. Look at all the white space on the button. It's bright, it's cheerful. The Nixon button. What's the Nixon button missing? His name. That's right. For peace and prosperity, vote straight Republican. The button's yelling at you. You've got two pictures here. Kennedy's smiling, Nixon is not. Kennedy has, what's it called? A neck and shoulders, and Nixon is a disembodied head. Nonetheless, despite this, squeaker of an election. A lot of people still hotly contest it. Think Kennedy stole it in Illinois. A really, really controversially close election, but it might have been lost courtesy of Nixon's tiny little character missteps. Nixon, after he conceded, told the press, "You won't have Dick Nixon to kick around again." He was kidding. Let's skip ahead to 1968. We'll skip 64. Sorry, again, just learning. So, 1968, Vietnam War is raging on. Johnson is eligible for another term, but he withdraws from the race. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago is a clusterfuck. There's a riot. It's followed by a conspiracy trial that wages way into the following year. It looks like the youth of America is either being drafted or is setting fire to their draft cards. Things are really, really messy there. Here are two fascinating campaign ads from 1968 that address the youth issue in two decidedly different ways.
American youth today has its fringes, but that's part of the greatness of our country. I have great faith in American youth. The youth of today can change the world, and if they understand that, I think that we're going to go forward to a great age, not just for Americans, but for peace and progress for all the people in the world.
Got his name in there. He, however, is not in it. His voice is, but in the 8 years since 1960, we've learned that if you want to sell Nixon, don't use Nixon. It's a dynamic, exciting, colorful ad. It starts with a blast of sort of generic clip art acid rock. It warns about the strangers in our midst. Anyone notice the visual on the word stranger? Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead probably making his first and only appearance in a political advertisement. But it doesn't alienate the hippies, it just says that's part of the diverse American fabric. That's part of what makes us a great country, is that we let all these people in. And then when the music switches from acid rock to sort of Burt Bacharach jazz flute, then we start to see the real American youth who are hard at work and they're multicultural and diverse and interesting. It's colorful, it's fun to look at. Hubert Humphrey from the Democratic Party ran this ad.
We have seen the terrible results of violence in this country. It would be intolerable if a handful of violent people, and that is what it is, just a handful, could harden us against needed change. We must give notice to this violent few. There are millions of decent Americans who are willing to sacrifice for change, but they want to do it without being threatened, and they want to do it peacefully. They are the non-violent majority, black and white, who are for change without violence. These are the people whose voice I want to be.
Anyone need another cup of coffee? So we're going to address the youth vote by putting an upper middle-aged guy just staring at you and lecturing at you. And he can't even do it in one take. There's a jump cut at 08, if anyone noticed that. It's a striking logo, reminds me a little too much of a swastika. I might be reading too much into it. Yeah. Squeaker of an election, but Nixon won by 1 percentage point of the popular vote. Humphrey virtually never heard from again. And then, of course, Nixon went on to a lot of depressing history. We can skip over that. Let's go to 1976. This was another really close one. It's 2 years after Nixon's resignation after Watergate. Vietnam is over. But there's a deep fundamental mistrust of Washington, D.C. Everyone has kind of seen how the sausages are being made, and it's clearly just the calcified center of American corruption. The two candidates that year, Carter and Ford, had to present themselves as a new chapter of American politics. Let's watch how they did that. This one's got some weird leader in front of it. I got it off a British website. By the way, I had to find an American political ad on a British website, which is strange, but here, watch this. Here it comes.
I'm a Southerner, and I'm proud of a heritage that shows concern for the working men and women who are the backbone of our great nation. These are the people who are often cheated by an unfair system of government. These are the people forgotten by the present administration, while the influential and powerful get special favors. When I'm elected president, that will change.
We in the South can help by voting for Jimmy Carter, a leader for a change.
First off, I love that slogan, a leader, comma, for a change. Just the right amount of ambiguity, really, really striking. And remember, it's 2 years after Watergate. And here he is walking in his farm, talking with his wife, dressed really casually. And he's not a yokel. He was governor of Georgia. He's not a complete political outsider, but he's not of D.C. Compare and contrast, if you will.
There's a change that's come over America, a change that's great to see. We're living here in peace again, we're going back to work again, it's better than it used to be. I'm feeling good about America.
Today, America enjoys the most precious gift of all. We are at peace.
We're at peace with the world and at peace with ourselves. America is smiling again. And a great many people believe that the leadership of this steady, dependable man can keep America happy and secure. We know we can depend on him to work to keep us strong at home. We know we can depend on him to work to ease tensions among the other nations of the world. We know we can depend on him to make peace his highest priority. Peace with freedom. Is there anything more important than that?
You don't see his eyes. You don't see his name. You don't see his eyes. He never looks at you. You see him by himself, cloistered in the Oval Office or in a limo. Remember, we've just seen a guy walking through his field. This guy's stuck in the Oval Office by himself. He's referred to in the ad copy as steady and dependable, which is probably not how you describe a president so much as you describe a husband you are cheating on. It is a it is a striking change. Still, though, Carter just squeaked by in that election, extremely, extremely close, and then lost in quite a landslide in 1980. We're going to skip ahead through a couple of more. That's me, right? Okay. Sorry, we've got to ride the levels on the ads because some of them are really old. Sorry. That's cool. That's either the most awesome ringtone in the world. We're going to jump across a couple landslide elections really quick. I just have a couple quick visuals from each of them that are kind of fascinating. Here's how you lose an election.
Mr. Reagan will raise taxes, and so will I. He won't tell you. I just did.
Carried one state, carried his home of Minnesota. New York and California went red that year. One state. Here is Michael Dukakis showing us that he is actually strong on defense. Pretty famous photograph. As always, the Democrats were being hammered that year for wanting to cut too much out of the military, and Dukakis, who was 5'4", 5'5", decided to prove them wrong by taking a photo opportunity in a tank. Compare and contrast. Take away whatever you think. I want to put your ideology on the back burner for a moment. You're a casting director. Who do you cast as the commander-in-chief? Is it the short guy who's wearing a tie under his flak jacket? 24 years, I did not notice he was wearing a tie. I'll give you a hint. You probably wouldn't cast the guy who actually had active military service. We'll skip ahead through the Clinton years. Plenty has been said about the man's charisma, and those were not particularly close elections. 2000, on the other hand. So we're coming right after Lewinsky-gate here. And it's a time of peace and prosperity, but it's also a time where people are talking a lot about personal responsibility and character. Here are two campaign ads that discuss personal responsibility in pretty different but explicit terms.
Strengthening education begins with us, not with government. Parents simply have to get involved and take responsibility to make sure that their children study and learn. But government has to take responsibility for what it can do. Fix failing schools, reduce the class size, set high standards for students and for teachers. We're in an information age. We have a responsibility to make sure that our schools are the very best in the entire world.
And now this.
I believe we need to encourage personal responsibility so people are accountable for their actions. And I believe in government that is responsible to the people. There's a big difference in philosophy between my opponent and me. You trust government, I trust you. I trust you to invest some of your own Social Security money for higher returns. I trust local people to run their own schools. I trust you with some of the budget surplus. We should help people live their lives, but not run them. I'm asking for your vote.
Again, put your ideology on the back burner. One of the most hotly contested elections in our lifetime. Gore, who's famous for being kind of condescending, a little too smart for his own good, is talking at a group of people. Governor Bush is talking to you. He is asking you for your vote. It's a direct, simple message. Again, he's learned a lesson from Jimmy Carter in '76. He's dressed down, casual chambray shirt. It's the end of the '90s, why not? Gore, suit, tie, lecturing. I don't have to remind anybody in this room how close that election was. But the thing that was interesting about Bush that I never quite saw, but a lot of people claimed that whatever you thought of his policies, there was that X factor about him that you wanted to sit down and have a beer with him. And it looks like there's maybe a beer just off screen, just right here. That's not a knock on anything about the guy's reputed habits. There's just something so folksy and accessible. And he's also, in 2000, a better speaker than he was just 4 years later. This takes us up to this.
He's the biggest celebrity in the world. But is he ready to lead? With gas prices soaring, Barack Obama says no to offshore drilling and says he'll raise taxes on electricity. Higher taxes, more foreign oil. That's the real Obama.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
Ad didn't work very well. Again, there is something about, it is one thing to call somebody elitist and out of touch and famous and a rock star. It's another thing to come off a little whiny about it. And I kind of think that's what that ad does. And whatever you think of Obama, it's probably not fair to put him on the same intellectual footing as Paris Hilton. I think America felt that, and I think they responded accordingly. Let's come up to the present day, 2012. Romney is being dogged by accusations that he is way too rich to understand the problems of the common man, that he is out of touch, that his wife is also rich, he's born of money. Here's a photo of the two of them on a yacht over the summer. It's similar to the windsurfing photo, and you might say, wait a second, John, that's clearly a personal photo. It's none of our business what they take pictures of. This wasn't exactly a photo op, and you're absolutely right, except Tag tweeted it. Got about 140 retweets when I did this screen capture 2 weeks ago. Gotta love this shot of mom and dad on Lake Winnie at sunset tonight. Do we, Tag? Do we have to? So there's that. It was, that was pretty much the story of the summer, was Mitt trying to prove that he wasn't out of touch and being constantly thwarted. He's also a Mormon, that's no secret. The Mormon Church didn't allow black people to become priests until 1978. So he's got a lot of work to do in the African American community. Here he is trying to do just that.
Who's got your camera, though? Who let the dogs out? Who? Thanks, guys. Good to see you guys. Thank you. You gotta get warmer out here, though.
I'm not gonna dump on the guy. There have been missteps from the Obama campaign as well. Obama has been consistently accused of being way too arrogant. There are right-wing blogs that count how many times he uses the personal pronoun I in his speeches, which is actually pretty interesting. It's a remarkably high number. So unfortunately, he has chosen to counter these accusations of arrogance with this. This is a poster you can buy on the Obama website that replaces the stars that represent our states with his initial. Now, this might not look like a huge deal. It was on the right-wing blogs, but it's technically against the law. In 1923, House of Representatives adopted the US flag code that says you can't use the flag for any sort of advertisement. You can't deface it in any way. And here is a president of the United States who is breaking this law. It's a federal law. It bumps up against the First Amendment, so you can't be prosecuted for it, so it's more like federal etiquette. Still, this is against this. Cause to be placed any word, figure, mark, picture, design, drawing, or any advertisement of any nature upon any flag. It's a bit of a misstep. Now, let's stick to graphics for a moment. I want to hop real quick back to 2004. Here's a graphic from the New York Times comparing the two bumper stickers. It's not Monday morning quarterbacking. It was a month before the election, and based on the bumper stickers, the Times called it for Bush-Cheney. Look at the Bush-Cheney logo, bold, italicized, direct. The flag looks great, and it kind of merges with the 04. The Kerry Edwards has a ton of weird blank space. There's a lot of lowercase letters. A stronger America? Well, sure, we all want a stronger America, but Bush gives you a website that you can go to. It's a really active, it's like, here's a thing you can do. We all vaguely want a stronger America. So let's do the same thing with today's candidates. Here we go. These are the bumper stickers that you can get off of the Obama and Romney websites. They're both presented the same way in stacks, the implication being that you should get a bunch, give them away, party favors, I don't know, do what you will. Who wins? I'm not a graphic designer, I yield to the floor. Who wins?
Obama wins.
And why? What is it?
Because first of all, you don't have to turn your head to read the URL.
Yeah.
And even though they both have a lot of negative space, the Obama-Biden message being centered and on the white is easier to read. Even though they say that white on black should be easier to read, the one on the left is cleaner to me. And I'm a graphic designer, so.
Great, that's all I need to hear. Anybody else notice anything?
It looks more like Omni Ryan. Like the R's not so clear.
Oh, yeah. The R is not clear, yeah. That's a really, you had a problem with the R last night. We were just talking about this. Yeah, there's the sideways URL, the weird misspelling. Also, this is an interesting thing. Obama counteracts the fact that he's got a really foreign last name by putting it in the same font size as the bottom of the ticket. So it kind of softens the blow of Obama, who just a year and a half ago had to show his birth certificate. Never happened before in the history of the country. So there's a striking, then of course there's the bright white in the middle of the, which doesn't just make the writing easier to read, it just makes it generally more vibrant. Let's take a look at a couple of attack ads that have run on the subject of the economy and how the two candidates have approached the topic.
President Obama says he's creating jobs, but he's really creating debt. The facts are clear. Obama's 4 deficits are the 4 largest in U.S. history. He's adding almost as much debt as all 43 previous presidents combined. And over 30 cents of every dollar Obama spends is borrowed, much of it from countries like China. He's not just wasting money, he's borrowing it and then wasting it. We can't afford 4 more years.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
Pretty strong ad. Couple things to point out. They can only show still photos of Obama. You can't show him moving, you can't show him talking if you're in the Romney camp. There's just a charisma deficit. You can't let this guy speak because he's incredibly charming. He's really easy to listen to. My father went to his grave, a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. He could not stop just felling about how awesome Obama was on the stump. So you can't use Obama against Obama. It simply doesn't work. So there's just still photographs, including one shot of his official presidential portrait, because you can't see the guy in motion. Obama, however, does not have that problem.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Running for governor, Mitt Romney campaigned as a job creator.
I know how jobs are created.
But as a corporate raider, he shipped jobs to China and Mexico. As governor, he did the same thing, outsourcing state jobs to India. Now he's making the exact same pitch.
I know why jobs come and why they go.
Outsourcing jobs. Romney economics. It didn't work then, and it won't work now.
Obama can show himself and he can show the other guy because he wins on looks and presentation. It's a pretty effective ad because it's really able to hoist Romney on his own petard. This was the narrative until about, let's say 2 weeks ago. Then this devastating ad came out the morning after the first debate.
From the Magnus Arena at the University of Denver in Denver, Colorado. And I welcome you to the first of the 2012 presidential debates.
And what we're seeing right now is, in my view, a trickle-down government approach, which has government thinking it can do a better job than free people pursuing their dreams, and it's not working. And the proof of that is 23 million people out of work. The proof of that is 1 out of 6 people in poverty. The proof of that is we've gone from 32 million on food stamps to 47 million on food stamps. The proof of that is that 50% of college graduates this year can't find work. We know that the path we're taking is not working. It's time for a new path. I know this is bigger than an election about the two of us as individuals. It's bigger than our respective parties. It's an election about the course of America. What kind of America do you want to have for yourself and for your children? There's no question in my mind that if the president were to be reelected, he'll continue to see a middle-class squeeze, with incomes going down and prices going up. I'll get incomes up again. You'll see chronic unemployment. We've had 43 straight months with unemployment above 8%. If I'm president, I will help create 12 million new jobs in this country with rising incomes. The president's reelected, you'll see dramatic cuts to our military. I will not cut our commitment to our military. I will keep America strong and get America's middle class working again.
No matter what side of the political spectrum you fall down on, this was Romney's high point. Everybody, Chris Matthews, Andrew Sullivan, all the left-wing pundits agreed that he was just on fire on this particular night. I do not know if it's going to really turn the tide of the election. The polls are still too close to call. But this was Romney's chance to prove that he wasn't a robot, that he was a real person. One of the reasons John and I decided on this speech was because my training in improv has taught me that if you are in a scene with somebody and you're improvising and it's not going well, you have to make an emotional connection with your scene partner. And that's what the best of these ads do, is they make a real emotional connection with the viewer, with the voter. I'm reminded of a moment in 2000 when a journalist came up to Al Gore and asked if there was any significance that he was born 9 months after the Roswell incident in New Mexico. And Al Gore said, "Are you asking if I'm an alien? Because I'm not." Hang on, sorry. And Frank Luntz said this: if you have to assert you are human, there's no way you're going to be elected. Let's recap real quick. What do the losers have in common? They reinforce their own stereotypes. I look terrible in a tank. I'm weak on defense. I really do have an incredibly hot temper. They have that aforementioned hot temper, inability to remain cool under pressure, to look either sweaty like me, like Nixon. Look, I'm not running. They have that general lack of coolness that is so hard to quantify. They look like the overdog, elitist, rich, a Washington insider, or they whine about being the underdog. Careful distinction to make. What do the winners have in common? They are cool under pressure. They have a tireless optimism about the country, about you, about themselves. They successfully scare you about the other guy. They represent what Americans want to be, not necessarily what they are. In short, I would like to provide you with the ideal presidential candidate for 2016. God bless America. I will take any questions.